I was raised in the country until about the age of 12, and we lived 6.5 miles north of Gan Valley. So, of course, in those years, you just didn't go anywhere. And the only church that was available was in Gan Valley. And we just never went to church. But I don't know, I suppose I was 8 or 10 years old. They had Bible school in my country school. And I think it was James Valley Christian that sent the minister out. And it was a couple of young girls that came out. And that was my first encounter, really, with any church involvement. And one of the young girls, and I still remember it so vividly today, took me out on our back porch. And she talked to me about being saved. And that was she made a big impression on me. And I felt that I was saved after that day. And that's always stayed with me. I don't remember a lot of my younger years, but that's one thing that has never left me. And we moved into Gan Valley in the early 50s. My dad ran an implement business, and there was a little church there. And so my brother and I, we started going to Sunday school. And there were just so many things that were so different to us. And it was kind of like I see here, and I'm guilty of it too. We have a certain pew that we want to sit in. And if somebody else is in it, we just don't feel comfortable if we can't get in that pew. And we had a couple of elderly couples there that were that way. And I think that was one of my enjoyable things, was to see if they'd get their pew or not that morning, And then we had a little old lady that kept track of the amount of people that attended. And boy, she was specific in that. And so there were just so many little things that you learned that were important in your trip to church. And my first minister was Reverend Short, and I know some of you will remember him. And he was a very strict minister, but he was a very nice gentleman, and his wife was just a sweetheart. And but she did not believe in wearing pants. Women wore dresses, and so most time the women came in dresses. That was just something that you didn't do because it said in the Bible that women were not to dress as men. And so I became a member of that church in my teen years. And my folks never attended church. My mother had a church background, but my dad was an orphan. He was abandoned by his father when he was like 4 or 5 years old. He was left out in a pasture. And people that owned that pasture, they found him there. And they raised him through grade school. And then he just was on his own. He worked for different neighbors for several years. And I never realized at the time what a horrible childhood he must have had, because he never complained about it. He never talked about it. But my aunt then filled me in on it here a few years ago. And he was quite a person. And he maintained that Joe and I got an education in the church. He always gave to the church, but the only time I ever remember of my dad being in the church was like a funeral. And my mother, she was raised in the church, but if my dad wouldn't go, she wouldn't go. So she didn't, but we had to go, Joe and I. And so then after I got married, and Jim and I attended the church there, and we took our kids to church when they were little, and Kathy was the naughty one, but it only took one trip out, and she was good after that. Her dad took her out once, and but it was such a nice little church. We didn't have a real big attendance, but it was a real fellowship there. everyone knew everyone, and then my piano teacher was the organist, and then Twyla Zastro came along. And we had Twyla as our organist for years, and she was so good at it. But then they moved away. So then I took over playing the piano, and then we got Galen Van Zee came in. And, well, we had Reverend Keller, I forgot to mention that, for several years after Reverend Short. And he was a real fun minister. And he was so well liked in the community. Even the people that didn't come to church just really appreciated Reverend Keller. And it was good for the whole community to know that he was there in our community, and he did not belittle anyone. I mean, if you didn't come to church, it didn't matter to him. And so then we had Twyla Zastro, and then they moved away, and Galen Van Zee came to preach in our church, and he was a lay minister. And his wife she could play the organ. I could not play our organ. So she and I played in the church. We kind of took turns. And so that made it so that I know that made Jim and I more likely to attend church every Sunday. I'm sure that there would have been times that it would have just been easier to stay home. We were tired, but we had to go. And I think sometimes we need to do that more with some of our young people. We need to make them involved so that they have to come. And that's the way we got Brian coming out there too. We would have Christmas program and things, and we'd need entertainment, and of course he couldn't turn me down. He had to come. So we got him out there to entertain us several times, and that was I was real proud of that. My first tragedy in life was my little brother was killed, and he was 4 years old, and I was, I think, 16 at the time. And that was it really woke you up to what life was really about and how you needed to have God in your life, because I don't know how people handle death if they don't have God in their life. My parents took it very hard, of course, and my dad and I were there when it happened, and I know my dad was never the same after that, but our faith got us through, and my mother would not even talk about Larry for several years. You just didn't mention him, and then she finally did, and I think that really helped her in the later years. She was, I didn't realize how much faith she had until after she died, and I had her Bible, and I went through and saw all the things that she had marked in there and things she had written down, and I was real pleased to see that. I had a real close relationship with my grandmother, and she was the next loss that I had, and she had a big influence on me. She was very believed in everything that she believed in, and if you didn't, that was just tough. You were going to do what she said anyway. And she helped me a lot get through the years. And then in the 90s, Jim and I moved to town, and my brother died, and he had had 4 or 5 heart surgeries before that and died during one of those surgeries. And then lo and behold, the next year Jim was killed. And that was a real awakening for me to be all alone. I mean, I had my mother yet, but to have lost 2 of the men that were so important in my life was, like I say, if I wouldn't have had God in my life, I don't think I could have survived it as well as I did. And then Al and I got married 3 years after that, and we were looking forward to spending our later years with a lot of fun and happiness. And lo and behold, he got sick. And about 2 years before he died, my mother died. And then Al had cancer. And that was really hard too, because he wasn't ready for it. He wanted to enjoy a few more years, but I will never forget when we really didn't find out that he had a very short time left until just a matter of days before he died. And I can remember I came back to the hospital early one morning, and he had finally gotten some sleep, and he woke up, and I spoke to him, and he said, "Oh no, I'm still here." And I think he was so ready to go, and that was so much help for me, because I was ready for him to go then, because I knew that's what he wanted. He wanted out of the pain, and he knew he couldn't live, and he just wanted to get it over with so the rest of us wouldn't have to go through that for any more days. And I guess I've decided I'm still here for a reason. I don't know why. I guess you don't need to know why. But God isn't done with me yet, and I hope I'm doing what he expects of me. And I will say one thing about any of you here that are widows like me. You become closer to God, because he's there with you all the time, and you're alone. And it makes you more aware of God in your life, that's for sure. And you have to let God help you get through so many of those times. And he certainly has done that with me, and Pastor Paulson has been a tremendous help in my life since he's been here, and he really taught me what the grace of God really means. And to close, I have a shower curtain on my bathtub, and it has blocks on it, and it's faith, joy, love, and peace. And I really enjoy just reading that every once in a while. And faith, and it has Hebrews 11. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And that is so true. And joy, 3 John 1, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. And that is so good to know. And love is 1 Corinthians 13. If I speak in the tongues of men and angels but have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames but have not love, I gain nothing. And the last one was peace, and it's Galatians 5. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, and faith. And I think if we have God in our lives, we're going to have all of these. And I feel that I have these, and I appreciate my church. I love all the people that come here, and I hope we can maintain this church for many years to come, and get our young people more involved in the church.